The Celestial Empire, or Points and Pickings of Information about China and the Chinese, by George Mogridge. Chapter 21: Manufactures, Trades, and Occupations. Did you ever sit down to compare England with other nations and Englishmen with other people? If you ever did, you must have risen from your seat with a closer attachment to your country and a warmer glow of affection for her people. In every nation under the skies, you may find, if you look for them, some good qualities set forth. But in old England, you may find them all. When a boy goes abroad to gather nuts, he plucks as he goes along, perhaps one from a bough and two from a bush, and then comes suddenly to a spot where the fruit hangs in clusters on the same spray. It is thus with the good qualities of the head and the heart. In other climes you see them few and far between, but in old England they grow in clusters. Put Queen Victoria with her people in one scale, and the Emperor Tao Quang with his 300 millions in the other, and the Son of Heaven will kick the beam, even if you put in with him the Chinese wall to keep him down. I must now say something about the trades of China. Nations get more by trading than by fighting with each other. By fighting, they break each other's heads, but by trading, they may comfort each other's hearts. The manufactures of China are in many respects excellent. The porcelain or Chinaware of the Celestial Empire, notwithstanding the attention paid in Europe to this manufacture, as yet remains unrivaled, though this is no doubt owing in a great degree to the excellence of the material found in China. The clay which the Chinese make use of is not to be found equally fine in any other part of the world. As the manufacture of porcelain undoubtedly originated with the Chinese, we should regard ourselves as indebted to them for a very great extension of our comfort and pleasure. In the manufacture of lacquerware, the Chinese are very clever. When the articles in wood are neatly made, they are covered with paper, which is fastened to them with gum or glue or hog's lard. A thin surface of porcelain earth is next applied and smoothed down when dry with a stone. The ornaments and figures are painted thereon and then washed over and over again with a lacquer or varnish. Some of this lacquerware is very beautiful. In the preparation of a superior description of silk, the Chinese have attained great excellence. From remote ages, the Emperor of China, for the time being, has directed the plough, and the Empress planted the mulberry tree, being the food of the silkworm. The embroidery of the women of China is admirable, and still more so that of the men, who produce wondrous workmanship. Many a pretty sketch might be taken of ladies sitting at their balusters or gay verandas, busily occupied at their agreeable toil, as well as of the humbler and homelier females, closely engaged in work at the green lattices of their several abodes. Glass blowing is a curious art, in which the Chinese excel. Headdress ornaments, earrings and armlets, jugs, bottles and flowers, pens, pencils and rings with ornamental birds and beasts, fishes and insects are rapidly produced, while one assistant blows the bellows for the glass blower and another relieves him from the heat of the furnace with his fan. In the manufacture of spangles from copper wire and in the laying on of feathers, forming with them feather mosaic, the people are equally adroit. Great skill and patience are shown in these works. I have before spoken of the beautiful balls of carved ivory so universally admired. For a time, it was supposed that those were made up by putting one in another and then joining them neatly with cement. But as the balls have been subjected to the test of hot water, it is now generally believed that the dozen or 15 loose balls, one within another, that are exhibited are wrought out of one solid ball of ivory. The Chinese, indulging their imaginations much in the marvelous and horrible, show great ingenuity in carving into odd, grotesque, and fearful shapes the roots of trees. The roots of the bamboo and other trees, abounding in knobs and projections, are very favorable to their designs, and out of them they certainly produce the most striking and fantastic specimens of deformity. They use also the figure stone, which is sufficiently soft to be cut with a knife for the same purpose. And these productions, both in wood and stone, they often sell at considerable prices, though very low when the time and labor bestowed on them are taken into consideration. Carvings in mother of pearl are executed with great skill. The ingenuity of a Chinaman in such matters is only equalled by his industry. The Chinese manufacture paper, which, though suited to their mode of printing, would hardly recommend itself to us. And they are famous for the manufacture of Indian ink. This was for many years supposed to be made from a liquid obtained from the cuttlefish. Glue and a very fine kind of lamp black are the real materials of which it is composed. That made at Canton is inferior. The better kind is manufactured at Paukum and Nanking. The Chinese work in copper, pewter, tin, iron, and steel, but they succeed better in other things. Their taste appears better adapted to finish a trifle with care than to form an useful article well. They surprise us by what may be called their knickknacks, but we hear very little of their steam engines. The articles formed by them from the bamboo are without number, and the excellence of their damask, sarcenet, satin, crepe, and shawls is well known. Never yet have the Chinese had from us half the credit they deserve. In describing the crowded streets of Canton and Pekin, I spoke of some of the characters which carried on their calling in the open air, or that went from house to house. Among these, the barber holds a distinguished place. With his razors and brushes, his tool, small furnace, and water, he goes his rounds, a welcome visitor. His services are too important to be dispensed with. Equally at home at his avocation, indoors or out, not only is he a shaver and a hair cutter, but also a master of the healing art, and a shampooer of all who need his assistance. If you have never heard of shampooing, the following description will amuse you. The shampooer placed me in a large chair, and then began to beat with both hands very fast upon all parts of my body. He next stretched out my arms and legs and gave them several sudden pulls. He then got my arm upon his shoulder and hauled me sidewise a good way off the chair, giving my head at the same time a sudden twitch or jerk, almost enough to pull my neck out of joint. Next, he beat with the ends of his fingers very softly and very quickly all over my body and legs, every now and then cracking my fingers. Then he stroked my ears, temples, and eyelashes. After this, he began to scrape, pick, and syringe my ears, every now and then tinkling with an instrument close to them. The next was my eyes, into which I patiently suffered several small instruments to be thrust and turned about. He next proceeded to scraping, paring, and cleansing the nails of my fingers and toes, and then to cutting my corns. For all this, the small charge of 1 penny only was asked. Peking is a place of interest to a foreigner. Songte, I again recall the days that are flown. Thou hast a gold button on thy cap, and an honest heart in thy bosom, and I am standing with thee, gazing on the busy scene. The itinerant shoemaker there is in himself a complete picture. He has so many points about him. A basket contains his whole stock in trade and all his utensils. His enormous spectacles are looped over his ears, and his constant companions, his fan and his pipe, are within his reach. Yonder is a poulterer with his bamboo cage of living birds, and a little beyond is a travelling tinker busily employed, his pincers in his hand, his brazier before him, his irons, hammers, and other implements about him, his broad-brimmed hat near him, while men with pipes, women smoking, and children full of curiosity surround him. Children, did I say? I could fancy them all little old men. Every one, in my eyes, is a young 100-year-old. The puppet show there makes the people all alive. The wooden figures are skillfully managed, and men, women, children, lions and dogs perform their parts in succession. What a medley of people are before me. A viper seller with a list of his reptiles in his hand has just passed me. Here comes a fruitier with his melons and grapes. Yonder is a vendor of dogs with his steel-yard-like weighing machine. And flower sellers, hawkers, porters, sailors, sedan chairmen, and beggars are seen in every direction. Songte, wilt thou ever visit the abode of liberty? Wilt thou ever gaze on the chalky cliffs of Albion? Friendly didst thou prove to the barbarian in thy native land, and should he meet thee in his, friendly will he prove to thee.